Welcome to this episode of Eye of the Swarm, your deep dive into anything and everything related to Yellow Jacket Athletics with the Big Sound Matt Johnson. I am John Garver, Season 5, Episode 18. And we're
piling them up now.
We are piling them up, and we are completely in the deep end of the spring sports pool as the last couple of weeks have seen a lot of action.
Yeah.
And I think Saturday was one of the busiest days. Thankfully, we only had one team at home. One of the busiest days we've ever had.
Yeah, we had a lot going on. There was plenty of action going on actually all weekend. Just about everybody that could possibly be in action was competing and doing quite well for the most part.
Yeah, for the most part, it's a pretty good week.
Yeah, pretty good week. Baseball and softball combined went 5-1 on the weekend, so that's always good against North Central. Men's baseball they're going to feel like they let one get away against North Central. It should have been probably 6-0. But all in all, not bad. Softball picked up 3 wins, scored 62 runs in the process against North Central. They now have scored, I looked up the numbers, John, 220 runs now in 24 games. That's 9.2 runs per game.
I would imagine, I haven't looked nationally, but I would imagine that probably puts them
right up there in the top.
Pretty comfortably in the top 10.
Yeah,
I would think probably in the top 5.
And they're hitting about 360 as a team right now.
Also,
between 360
probably
370.
very, very high nationally.
Yeah, and all of a sudden they found the long ball.
They've been
hitting a lot of them.
They've been hitting a lot of them.
Hitting a lot of them lately. So, and that's coming off of a dramatic split against UW Stout earlier in the week with a walk-off home run from Zoe Thompson that wins the second game in the 12th inning. That was a marathon affair. It was a really entertaining game to watch, but it took a long time. And then, like I said, they got 3 games against North Central down in Minneapolis that they won. The scores were big. Clearly, they outscored them 62-4 in the 3 games. So that was a big one. And baseball lost the opener of their 3-game set with North Central 3-2, but then came back and won 10-0 and 9-1. So back on track a little bit there. Tennis had a nice weekend. They only played 1 match, but really impressive.
Really impressive, yeah. I think that was probably the high point.
Yeah,
that was the high point of the weekend.
Yeah, the men defeated Northwestern 7-2. Not necessarily a big surprise there,
right?
Because they actually have been winning a lot of matches against Northwestern in recent years. But the women, for the first time ever, defeat Northwestern, and that was sort of the measuring stick that they were going by. Women defeat the Eagles 6-3. Both those matches were on the road on top of everything else, so those were nice wins for Coach CJ Schaffner and company. So congratulations to tennis.
Absolutely.
Men's and women's track and field was in action. Golf teams were also in action. So yeah, there was plenty going on for sure. Women's golf played 1 meet on the weekend. Men's golf played 2.
Yep. It was the women was a 2-day event.
Yep.
And the men, I think it's basically a 2-day event because it's all the same teams, I believe.
Okay.
It's just day 1 is hosted by one, day 2 is the other. Kind of like we used to do at the Twin Ports Classic, collegiate, when Saints Glasgow would have 1 day, we would have 1 day.
Okay.
So it's kind of the same thing there between Lake Forest, Wisconsin, Lutheran.
Yeah, and they did that last year as well.
Yeah.
Of course, they're getting ready for the NCAA meet, which is coming up in May.
Yep, good for them to knock a little rust off.
Yeah, so they've got to knock a little rust off and get ready for that event. And then men's track and field won 6 events this weekend.
Yeah, they had a big weekend.
Yeah, so very impressive performance. The women also competed at that same meet. So, the teams are fully, like you said, into the spring mode, and everybody's performing pretty darn well.
Yeah, because you're 2 weeks away from tennis conference championships, track and field conference championships. You're 3 weeks out from baseball and softball, and so.
Yeah,
you're looking at it going, okay, tennis is probably the men are in a position where this weekend they could potentially clinch.
Yep. We got Bethany Lutheran this weekend.
A little bit down the road, the women are in a position where they could potentially clinch, and this is the Northern Division for tennis, not the full conference championship, but it's the Northern Division.
Right.
And then, softball is
tied for first place and right in the mix, and that's probably going to come down to the wire, I would think. Yeah, that one will probably come right down to the end. Right now there are actually 4 teams sitting at the top. We'll see. They'll start to parse each other out a little bit
when
more
they start playing each other.
Yeah, the next couple of weeks. In fact, the Yellow Jacket women now have a big series this weekend against Morris, which will go a long way towards deciding that. They were supposed to actually play Martin Luther this week as well, but those games have been now scheduled for the 3rd time.
Yep.
For next week. So those games will be back at home. That'll be the next time the Yellow Jackets will be at home. Baseball is technically at home, although they'll be across the bridge.
Right.
Taking on Minnesota Morris over at Wade Stadium. For those of you who don't know where Wade Stadium is, you can look it up online.
West Duluth.
Yeah, West Duluth. That's a busy playing surface there because that serves as the home field for about 5 or 6 different teams.
Right.
So there will, including UMD and St. Scholastica. So there will be games over there. A game under the lights, actually, on Saturday.
7 o'clock first pitch.
Yep, on Saturday, and then a doubleheader on Sunday. So they technically are at home. So if you have a chance, head over.
It's always fun to watch a game there.
Yeah, I mean,
I like that ballpark.
It's an old school grandstand. I know they're going to be doing some updates to it, but it's a very old timey baseball field, I would say. It's
been a few years since we played there.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, and it used to be a grass field. Now it's turf, thankfully, because
Yes.
otherwise they never be able to play there. But
Yeah, when it was grass, it was always hard to get that field playable.
yeah, exactly. But if you get a chance, and I don't know what the weather's supposed to be this weekend, hopefully it'll be good.
Should be better than it is today.
Yeah, well, that's not saying a lot. Well,
It's the reason we're not playing softball
Yeah,
tonight.
it's the reason why I'm not actually broadcasting softball at the moment, and you're not up there with me. We were actually supposed to be playing those softball games with Martin Luther right now. But for those of you who are not aware, we're recording this at a time where it is about 45-mile-per-hour winds and rain flying in from everywhere.
Yeah,
so it's not nice out.
Wind straight off the lake. I was walking this morning going, Lake Superior is doing its job.
Yep, it's doing its thing. It's doing its thing. But
It's the reason April is the worst month to live here.
Yeah. And then, by the way, men's and women's tennis will be home, I think, on Sunday, aren't they?
Correct. They've got 2 matches on Sunday.
Yeah.
Crown in the morning, Martin Luther in the afternoon.
So it'll be a busy day out there. So hopefully, again, the weather will be okay.
Yep, because they're playing outdoors.
They're playing outdoors.
They're not going to be inside.
Yep, and hopefully we'll be able to get those 2 matches in without a hiccup. And then, of course, the news that has been we've been waiting for this day for a while now. Ground has been broken now on starting in on the stadium.
Yes.
Yes.
The construction vehicles have moved in, and the fencing has gone up, and they've started moving the earth a little bit out on the site.
Not the actual stadium yet, but they're doing the utility work, which is prelim. So
the site of Superior Choice Credit Union Stadium on our campus. So it is going to happen.
It is happening as we speak.
The people who are like, well, I'll believe it when I see it. It is now can be believed. You are seeing it.
Yeah, it is
with
happening.
The official groundbreaking coming on Thursday the 25th.
Okay, yeah, because they're going to get all the utility work in first, and then they will actually technically and totally break ground on actually playing the stadium in.
And then once the academic year is done mid-May, then the real action starts.
Yeah, and then it'll be a fast track as much as possible. They're hoping to get it done by September.
Yep.
So that the Yellow Jacket men's and women's soccer teams and also cross country and track and field can use it.
Yes.
So that is what's coming up, and that's all that's going on campus. So it's actually all in all pretty exciting right now.
It is, and you did mention the softball doubleheader. We want to congratulate Coach Fracker. The win in the second game there, career win number 100.
Yep,
for her with the Yellow Jackets. So,
congratulations to her.
In dramatic fashion.
Yep, now she's up to 103.
103 after last
counting.
weekend.
Yeah.
So surging up the charts.
Yeah. Well, I know she wanted to do it at home.
Yep.
That was a big thing for her, and the team came through.
Yep.
And that second game against Stout was a marathon affair.
Mm-hmm.
Both teams had multiple chances to win it until Zoe Thompson finally, like I said, hit her
won it
with a shot to left, her 10th career home run. So congratulations to her on that too. She's actually had 3 walk-off hits in her Yellow Jacket career, 2 of which have been home runs.
Right.
And
one was a grand slam.
One was a grand slam on the same day.
Yeah.
A year, 2 years later.
apart.
Yeah, 2 years
2 years
later.
apart.
So some ironies there, but or some interesting factoids anyway. So, but that was the week that was, and our next. I'm really looking forward to talking with our next guest.
Yeah, we're going to take a break here. We'll come back, and we're going to have Randy Barker, who oversees the Pruitt Center for Mindfulness and Well-Being here on the UW Superior campus, and we're gonna dive into mental health a little bit and the different things that UW Superior is doing to help their student athletes with their mental health. And I'm looking forward to it. Randy's extremely knowledgeable on the subject and has taken some steps in his career nationally that have also kind of put UW Superior right in the middle of everything that's going on mental health-wise with student athletes at the national level. So it's going to be a fun conversation and probably a little bit of a deep conversation at times too.
Yeah. Randy is a great guy. For those of you who have not met Randy, he's just one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. He's also a UWS hockey alum and a former coach here, so he really understands student athletes and the psychology that goes into it. So whenever Randy stops by, I'm always excited.
Yep. We'll take a quick break. We'll come back with Randy Barker right after this. You are watching Eye of the Swarm.
Find your passion. Find your people. Find your purpose. Find your superior.
We're back for the roundtable segment of Eye of the Swarm, and this week a little bit different, Matt, as we've sort of left sport behind a little bit, but at the same time, this arguably could be the headiest topic, pun intended, and the
well done, Garver.
Thank you. I thought about it all day, but also the most important topic.
Yeah,
and one that really is kind of, in some ways, dominates the headlines right now.
Well, and it's one that certainly in the sports world, and our esteemed guest Randy Barker knows this, the sports world's become very much at the forefront now because for many, 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 many years, it's been overlooked for athletes, especially student athletes. The amount of pressure on top of going to school, trying to figure out what they're going to do with the rest of their lives when they get a degree. I mean, there's a lot going on, changes in their lives. And it is a topic, like you said, that has been overlooked. I don't want to say necessarily intentionally, but it has definitely been overlooked for a long, long time. And now, thankfully, it's starting to come out now. And we're starting to now, as a society, going to make that shift from not talking about it at all now to putting it into, into the spotlight, so to speak. And, people like Randy are a big part of it because, these are people. A lot of, I think, the American society has gotten accustomed to seeing what they do on the field, what they do on the ice, what they do on the court, what they do when they're running a race, but has not necessarily identified them as necessarily fellow human beings that also go through things, have things happen in their lives, and are actual people,
right,
away from what they're doing. And in fact, their sport is just one thing that they do, especially student athletes, and especially at the Division III level. There's a lot going on.
There is.
These are not people who are going to be playing professionally almost across the board in any sport. So there are things that are going on, and they need to get their their GPAs, and they need to get their credits, and they need to figure out what they're doing with the rest of life. And that's a lot to put on 18 to 22-year-old kids. So it's one of the things I really, really appreciate about UW Superior and the athletic department that we have is that we've put a really specific focus on maintaining mental health for all of our athletes across the board in every sport. I'm not sure how many athletic departments do that, but I know it's such a part of the approach that UWS has taken athletically, led by Nick Bursick and the coaches. But mental health is such a big part of what is important to the coaching staffs and the entire culture of the department that it's really cool. I mean, it's something that I really appreciate because I knew plenty of athletes when I was at St. Olaf and at UWS that struggle. Yeah. They do. There's a struggle there, and it's hard to sometimes sit and say, well, so-and-so struggling because for years we've just blown it off. But now it's starting
to come.
Yeah, suck it up, buttercup. This is how it is.
Right.
But now we're starting to finally, as a society, kind of recognize that, and it goes right along with the rest of society. So
right.
It's an important conversation to have, and I'm glad that people like Randy do what he does, and that it's a big focus in the athletic department.
Yeah. So Randy Barker from the Pruitt Center on campus here is our guest, and I want to go back to the beginning first, Barks, because how did you come to the decision that this is the road I want to go down and get into counseling and into mental health?
Yeah. Well, I mean, as you know, I was a student athlete. I coach, here at UW Superior and over at Scholastica for a while. And, after my hockey career, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I graduated with my undergrad in sociology, and I thought, well, maybe I'll go back and actually I thought maybe I'll probably work in the mill, which I was working in the summer. And, Nellie came to me, Steve Nelson, who was coaching at the time, and said, hey, would you ever consider staying around and coaching, helping me coach here? And I was like, yeah, I would. And then along the way there, it was an opportunity while I was here was to go to grad school. And, that was a decision where I'm like, okay, well, what would that look like for me? And I've always really enjoyed, working with people. I found like a lot of people would come to me and talk to me, and I think I was a good listener and was able to connect with people. And I'd done a lot of reading in sports psychology and really started to kind of dive into that area. So we have a Master's of Counseling program here at UWS, and I remember going to my first class there and not really sure if this was going to be a good fit. And after the first class, I knew that was what I wanted to do. I wanted to help other people, help themselves. I wanted to really get into this area and dive into it and make a difference in people's lives in today's world.
Did you have sort of a vision that this is going to be, I'm going to be in sport, I'm going to be at the college level, or were you thinking, not sure where this is going to go, I'm going to be in a private practice, I'm going to be a part of this? I mean, once you got out, what did you think this was going to be?
Yeah, well, I was fortunate to do my internship over at the College of St. Scholastica and in their counseling department there, and I really fell in love when working in higher education. It's I think the students that I got a chance to work with were outstanding students. I mean, not that they, the struggles are real and the severity is real in college campuses, yet the other thing is they are coming in with resources. They have resources. They've been able to accomplish some things in their lives, and you've got some things to really work with. Not only that, but I love the feel of a college campus. Just being a part of that community, being around experts in all sorts of different areas, and just really found a good fit there. And I've been in higher education for, I think, over 18 years now. So over at Scholas, I was able to get back over here, which I'm very proud of, and been here for I think over 13 years now.
Yeah, he's
Okay, so that.
well. I mean, he's
I didn't think it was that long.
staple of-
I was thinking, okay, it's been about 10 years. I didn't realize it had been that long.
Yeah.
Well, Randy's around quite a bit. Like I see
know.
him in the hall quite a bit. So, and he's been here ever since I think I've been here. It's pretty
Yeah.
close. So, but it's you have a unique perspective too, because you are not only a counselor, but you're a former student athlete. So you understand a lot of what goes into what the student athletes deal with. And I know you work with a lot of student athletes. I don't want to go too deep as to what their struggles are, but it does kind of give you a leg up, though, in terms of being able to understand like what student athletes go through when they're here, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you mentioned too is like student athletes are under a tremendous amount of stress. I mean, in today's world, I mean it's a really difficult place to live, and there's a lot of people are struggling with a lot of different things. But then I think like you said, you add on for student athletes the stress of of practicing on a daily basis, traveling, still needing to maintain those relationships. Still, many of them are also working.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different, stressors that are put on them that, I mean, I think they, if you look at the research, they're classified as a higher risk for those reasons. So we've really have made a deliberate effort here at UW Superior to really reach out to student athletes, knowing that, when we look statistically, they underutilize services comparable to, just that.
The general student body.
Yeah. So I think, over the last 4 years, it was like, well, what are we going to do to, number one, make sure that we're talking about this? It's not a one conversation and done. At times, that's what happens in this, and it's not here. We're talking about it on a day-to-day basis, which is it normalizes it. It breaks the stigma. And then we've taken lots of other deliberate, intentional efforts to really promote it and to take steps to make sure that we're doing things the right way here surrounding that. And I'd be more than willing to get into some of those steps later in the pod.
Yeah, I think I do want to go down that road a little bit, and I know there are people that are going to listen and go, I went to college, I played sports. It's not that. I think this generation is under a lot more stress and has so much more that they have to deal with and think about than we did.
Yeah.
As when we were in college together. So it's a different ballgame today, isn't it?
Oh, there's no two ways about it. I mean, I think the brain has not been able to keep up to how fast the world has changed, especially in these last 10 years. I mean, I'll just put it out there. Technology is a major, a change, and you don't need to hear it from me. You can look at the research. It has had a significant impact on the mental health and well-being of our youth, our adolescents, college students, adults. Right, it's affecting all of us, even though many positive things about it.
Sure.
It's a combination, but there, like you said, there's been a lot. I mean, especially in this era of screen time. where there's so much screen time now, whether it's on your phone or a tablet or a computer. You know, I went to school in the same generation you guys did, and I knew a lot of student athletes, and the guys were, and gals for that matter, were pretty, for the most part, I think that they kind of they kept some of the struggles to themselves, a lot of them. Yeah. But there was also the ones who also would self-medicate and do all these other things on weekends where they were, they could finally let loose and they'd go a little over the top and and then there were some that just fell into depressive states. I mean, and so while, like you said, Garves, maybe past generations said, well, I did it, it was no big deal. Number one, there is, I think, more pressure. Number two, it's not a one-size-fits-all scenario.
No.
Because you could have had teammates that you had no idea were really, really struggling behind the scenes and never let you know. Mm-hmm. And so that's another part of it. And that's the part that, with this focus on mental health now, is allowing those people to come forward finally and not have to try to suffer in silence and say, hey, look, I'm having a really hard time.
Sure. Well, yeah, I think one of the things, too, that we don't talk about enough as a statistic is that, 10 out of 10 of us have mental health. We all have it. And
just like physical health.
Just like physical health, right? So that's one of the things is when we look or we even hear the term mental health, there's a lot of misconceptions about it. We all have it. We're all somewhere on there. Life is extremely difficult. There are going to be highs. There are going to be lows. I mean, that's part of being human. And I think we just need to continue to talk about that. It's okay not to feel okay.
Yep.
No longer than is necessary, right? I think that's a little tagline that I always like to say. No longer than is necessary. So it's then when we do struggle, it's just saying, okay, I know that there's people here to help me through this.
That's what it really comes down to,
Yeah.
is having the support. Because like Randy said, everybody has a level of mental health.
Yeah.
And the statistics across the board, whether you're talking about student athletes, whether you're talking about professional athletes, people in society, the numbers are there, and they're pretty alarming in terms of how many people go through depressive states and have a bout of mental health issues. I mean, most people have multiple in their lives, if not, and then there are those who have chronic.
Yeah.
So it's a very, it's an area that has been overlooked for way too long, in my opinion.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. And I think we are talking about it. We are moving the needle with stigma reduction, but we still have a long ways to go.
Sure.
Yeah.
Let's dive into it a little bit here about what you talked about, how we've been very intentional on this campus and in particular within our department here. So let's talk a little bit about that and how have we been intentional?
Yeah.
What are some of those steps?
I think the first step that we've done, and this, I think we're on year 3 here, is that we've implemented mental health assessments at the beginning of every season. And what that entails is that each student athlete takes a very brief mental health screening, and from there each and every student athlete meets with one of our counselors in our staff. And there's a lot of different reasons, I think, that we do that. Number one is that it's not saying that mental health is important. It's an action. Mm-hmm. We're taking action. The other thing that I think it really does is that each student athlete then comes to our office and knows where we're located. There's still a lot of student athletes. There's still a lot of students, no matter how much marketing, how much we get out there, still say, well, where are you located? Mm-hmm. And at times that's an obstacle, is just them walking through the door. So we've by doing that, they've gotten in the door. The other thing it does is that they meet with someone on our team, on our staff. So they've already have that connection, which again is one of the biggest obstacles. And then I think the last step is that we kind of go over the screening with them. And if there's areas of concern, then we're able to address it. We're able to be very proactive. And, if there's areas, it's like, okay, let's schedule this, or, hey, let's talk about this topic, and why don't you come back in? So being very proactive with that. And I cannot tell you how many student athletes, when they come in, say, hey, I really appreciate this. This is outstanding that we're doing this. Mm-hmm. So I think that's one of the big steps is that we've done that the last 3 years. We'll continue to do that. I think the other thing is, as a department too, is myself, our team, the Pruitt Center and our counseling staff, we do a lot of workshops and trainings with all sports teams here on campus. So they're seeing us. we're going in, we're talking about these things on a consistent basis. The coaches, we come in and we talk to the coaches and provide training about, some things for them and resources for them. So it's this constant, continuous dialogue. They're learning about this. We're letting them know that, hey, this is natural, normal, right? And one of the things I always say is like, when they get a physical injury, they have, it's not a big thing to go in and see our athletic trainers. They should be.
Yep.
It's front and center in the lobby down
yeah,
there.
Right,
You
yeah.
see
Right.
You see athletes going in
Everybody
and out of
sees
there all the
them going
time.
in.
Yeah.
So it's really no different is the way I look at it is. So, and we always use this is like, if someone's struggling mentally, it should be no different, right? They should be coming in, getting the help that they need, and really being looked at as I'm doing the right thing, or it's a courageous act, knowing that, hey, by doing this, they're going to be able to get out and really enjoy their lives and perform better in all areas.
It really helps, I think, too, also having the coaches fully on board with it. I think if
100%.
If the coaches were resistant or skeptical, I think that would be an extra stressor for all that too. And we have, thankfully, a coaching staff and a group of coaches up here that are fully on board with what you're doing, and that's got to be a huge help. It
is. I mean, the other thing that we did last year too, and John, you were a part of this too, is we brought in some speakers. People that in the professional sporting arena that have struggled with mental health, and brought them to campus, and again, hearing those messages.
Yep.
And, it was well attended by our student athletes, and I think they really appreciate that. And, the Mental Health Matters shirts, I mean, to see those around campus, so I'm very proud of the work that we've done here at UW-Superior surrounding this area. And I'll be honest, I've spoke at other universities or other conferences, and I really believe that we're kind of at the top there. There's a lot of people that are looking at what we're doing here, wanted to kind of do the same steps.
You went down about 3 different paths here that I want to touch on, because I know you're also against the clock here, so I want to be mindful of that. But the first thing is, you talked about the assessments, and we've all been through day one of that kind of stuff. I just want to get out and practice, man. I'm tired of sitting in the room. I'm tired of listening to people, so I'm just going to rattle stuff off, and I'm going to hand this thing in. Right. How many, without being too, being very general here, obviously, but do you see often where they just, I'm getting it done to get it done, and then they come in and it's like, okay, wait a second here. This is something that's going to be very, very helpful for me, not just as an athlete, but more importantly as a student and a human. Yeah. Do you see that often?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the next step, is when they come through those doors, and, when you ask someone, I always think too, it's like, well, how are you doing? And then the follow-up, no, how are you really doing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think at times it's just this permission to just be real. Yeah. And to know that the person across from them is there to help them. They're not there to judge them. They're there to really help themselves. I think just that space alone, there have been numerous times where student athletes are going, well, yeah, I think I could probably benefit from coming in and meeting with someone. So I think that's the next step, right? Is not just the assessment, it's the meeting. And like I said, we've done it for 3 years. We've seen a significant increase in the utilization of our services from student athletes because of that. I think even if they're not struggling then, they're more inclined to come if they are, because they've met with someone, they know where we're located, there's that relationship built.
Well, and that's, you brought it up, Randy, and this is a good thing. This is the physical action of walking through the doors. As someone who has had his share of mental health stuff in his life, walking through those doors is a big psychological first step.
Absolutely.
Because you have to make that decision. I'm vulnerable here. Yeah. This is stuff that's really deep and really personal. Yeah. Once you walk through that door, now you're putting yourself out there. Yeah. Right? And it's not even, you haven't even said anything yet, but you've entered into that space now. And that's a huge step, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I don't know if a lot of people even understand those little steps. Right. Yeah. That come along with it.
Absolutely.
The second thing is you mentioned bringing people to campus. Yeah. And where did that whole idea come from, number one? Number two, how did you make the decision on who you wanted to come here? Because I did get to be a part of that, and it was extremely impactful for me. Yeah. So once you get into who was here, I'll talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, that was part of the Lydia Thiering speaker series, and one of the things is what we did there is we there was an outside group, including people from on campus here, to get together, and we want to bring in speakers that are going to have impact on different topics. And it was interesting when we kind of got together and said, well, what are the major areas of concern right now that we need to be talking about? Mental health obviously rose to the top. So that was an opportunity to kind of look at, well, who do we want to bring in? And we spent a lot of time really saying, okay, what if we're going to bring in speakers to talk about this topic, we want someone that's going to bring a story that's going to resonate with people and be an impact. And so we were able to bring in Clint Malarchuk, a goalie, and I'd heard him speak prior, and I thought he did. It was very powerful. I had read his book. I thought it was very, very well done. So I thought he was going to bring a perspective that was going to really impact our student athletes. And then Shaniqua Holtclaws, I looked at her. I wasn't familiar with her, but when I dove into kind of her story and what she had been through, and the other thing is we reach out to them and have a conversation with them, and I thought she would also be an outstanding person to come in and talk about that. The other thing that we talked about is we wanted to represent genders. Having both a male perspective and a female perspective, because what we do know is mental health does not discriminate.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So we were really intentional and deliberate about that. And from my perspective, I thought they both did an outstanding job. I thought that was a very successful event. And again, it opens up the conversation. Student athletes, after the fact, we're still talking about that.
Right.
So I think that was the goal, and I think we accomplished that.
It was extremely impactful. I was fortunate. I got to kind of MC and
Did you hear them both?
Moderate. Yeah.
Okay.
I got to introduce both of them.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so it was really a significant thing for me. But like everybody else, I've had my moments, where things aren't as great as you want them to be. And I just happened to be reading Clint's book at one of those times, and I read it, and I was like, whoa, okay. I read it again, and came out of that going, okay, wow, there's
a lot there.
That man's been through more than any human being should have to be through.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But read that a couple times, and it helped me. That was a story that really helped me. So when that opportunity came up, I jumped at it just so I could meet him and say, this thing really had an impact on me. So thank you for doing this. And that then goes into, when I told him I read your book twice, he's like, why? Which, okay, good humor. But that led into, here's my number.
Give me a call.
Anytime, give me a call. And he's actually called me and, how you doing?
Yeah.
No, how are you really doing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Clint, how are you doing? But it ended up being something that was very, very good for me.
Yeah.
Well,
And then he's been a great resource for other people, and
Absolutely he
that.
is.
he continues to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He continues to be.
Yeah.
And I think one of the really cool things, I was sad I didn't get a chance to make that event because I know about Shaniqua Holtclaw's background. I know about Clint Malarchuk's background. And you're talking about two athletes that played at the highest level in both of their sports.
And that's the other impact.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
And that's really impactful, I think. When you have someone or athletes, Clint Malarchuk was a longtime veteran of the NHL. Shaniqua Holtclaw she was kind of the first real superstar women's basketball player that came up following about Lisa Leslie.
Right.
In that generation. When you have that sort of connection and you have that sort of high-profile person saying, look, I went through a lot of things and I was not okay.
Yeah.
You could see what I did on the ice or on the court, but it was like when I wasn't on the ice or on the court, it was a struggle.
Yeah.
That's very impactful.
Yeah, I think that's the thing with professional sports too, is everyone thinks, well, how could they have problems?
They have the perfect life.
They've got the perfect life, yet we know that, when we peel things back,
Right.
they're, like you mentioned, they're human. They have struggles. They have difficulties no different than anyone else. And actually, I think, again, there's this higher risk because of all the different pressures and expectations that go along with being a professional athlete.
You've had the opportunity now because of what you do here to advance some of this to the national level, and you've been on I hate using the word committee, but I guess a couple national committees with the NCAA. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, no. So I was on the mental health or the NCAA Mental Health Advisory Board, and the athletic director here, Nick Bursick, nominated me. I was very honored to be a part of that. And what that was is they were bringing experts in the areas of mental health and well-being and representation from, different sports and different areas to really look at revising the mental health best practices for the NCAA. And what that is that's really a guideline. Is what they do is they look at the research, they look at all the different things that are going on with mental health and well-being, and then providing these best practices to athletic departments, as saying, hey, these are things that you should be looking at. These are the services that you should be looking at. If possible, resources provided. These are the things that, would be very helpful and useful for you to be able to implement to help your student athletes surrounding this area. So we met on numerous occasions to kind of go through that, and we just put out the revised copy of that. And again, every athletic department in the NCAA receives that, and I think it's very well done.
And you mentioned it earlier, but when it comes to putting some of these things into practice, you look at it and go, Superior's kind of ahead of the curve here.
Absolutely. I mean, it's interesting because I do talk to a lot of different athletic departments around this, or I'll talk about it, and they're always kind of a little bit surprised. Wow, so you guys are doing
little
all this.
tiny UW Superior,
Yeah.
a little
Yeah.
D3 is doing this.
Yeah, and so yeah, we are ahead of the game, and I think it's been a combination of having the right people. Saying, hey, this is important to us. And not only, and I think we talk, mental health is talked about a lot, which is wonderful. I think the missing piece is always action. Like, okay, it's important.
Yeah.
What are we going to do? And what are the actions that we're going to follow through with? That is where I think at times there's this missing piece. We take action here, and we have done it. So, yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of schools that are looking at us here at UW Superior and saying, hey, we want to do what you're doing.
What is the next step then for the university and the department then? What do you think is that next step? Because we are putting things in action. What's next?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, continue to do what we're doing, right? I mean, it's not. This isn't something where, well, okay, we've reached where we need to be. So I think number one, it's always continuing to do the things that work. And then I also think that this field is always changing and moving, and I think we need to always be leaders. We need to be looking at ahead, and I would say it's just continuing to move the needle a little bit. So what are next steps? It's getting together with student athletes. What do you need more of? Getting together with coaches. What do you need more of? Reading the research and saying, okay, what are some things that we need to be looking at to do better and different here at UW Superior to make sure that we're supporting our student athletes the best we can with their mental health and well-being.
Yeah, I mean, that I was thinking this entire time about you talking about putting things in action. That's part of the intentionality of it to me. That's part of what intention means. Like, you can have an intention, if you don't put it in the action, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And that's taking those active steps is really a big part of that.
Yeah.
And I that's one of the things that really about this entire process that's happening at UWS is that it's a very forward-thinking and approach to not just talking about it, and because it's one thing to talk about it, because a lot of people talk about it, but taking the extra steps to break the mold and say, this is how we're going to address these issues,
Right.
because this is important stuff. This is not just simply a case of how they can perform their best when they're competing or in the classroom. This is about more than that. This is about them as people.
Yeah.
And that's where the intentionality really comes in for me.
Yeah, I think one of the things that is really unique here at UW Superior is that, all universities have kind of these reactive responsive services of counseling services and psychiatric services, which are vital. We need to have those. We need to support those as much as we can. What we do here at UW Superior is we have the Pruitt Center for Mindfulness and Well-Being, which is a unique center. There's not, we're one of the only universities in the nation that has a center that's really based on the proactive, services of mental health and well-being, of kind of teaching these skills prior to people becoming in crisis. I think that's what happens to the mental health field is we wait for someone to be in crisis to receive care. And we say, no, we want to move upstream. We, at times it's, we try to teach people how to swim when they're drowning. Not the best way. So we can provide, all of our students here at UW Superior, but specifically our student athletes. Hey, these are skills that you can learn that when times become difficult, which they will,
Yep.
right? These are going to be helpful and useful.
Right.
And
Yep.
I think that's where the Pruitt Center has really done a lot of good work of teaching mindfulness, teaching emotional regulation, talking about connection, talking about sleep, talking about movement, talking about nutrition, talking about cognition. These are all learnable skills that can be utilized regardless of where you are in the mental health continuum, and you will benefit.
What are some of the things that you do personally to put some of this into practice in your own life?
Oh, John, thank you. Yeah. So yeah, and I'm glad you asked that, because part of it is I've really believed that I got to, if I'm going to teach this, and I'm not going to ask other people to do something that I'm not willing to do myself. Now, I will say, am I perfect at these things? No. Right. This is a process, and I'm always learning and always. But for instance, this morning when I get up, I have a meditation practice. So I get up and I practice my meditation on a daily basis. 5 to 10 minutes. I worked out before I got here. I went to the gym. I make sure that I get my movement in. It's the best, research proven, best antidepressant, anti-anxiety, anti-stress on the market, research proven, right? So those are the things that I do. My sleep. I've invested in my sleep. I just put in black.
The blackout blinds?
The blackout blinds,
Those are the best.
Yeah. So I really invest in sleep, knowing the importance of that in regards to my mental health. Do I eat perfect? No, but I try to make sure that I'm mindful of what I'm eating, knowing that is going to have an impact on my mental health and well-being. I'm very aware of connections. I know that the research on how important human-to-human connection is, and really being intentional and deliberate about, hey, instead of sending an email, you know what I might do? I might do it the old-fashioned way.
I'm just going to walk up to the office and say hello.
Say hello and connect and have a conversation. Mm-hmm. So those are the things that, I'm aware of, I intentionally do on a consistent basis, and I will say, without a doubt, it has helped me with my mental health and well-being.
How about for somebody who's tuning into this and maybe they are in a little bit of a dark period or anything?
Yeah.
What should they do?
Well, first and foremost, know that you're not alone. Right, so that's the first is you're not alone. The second thing I'd say is there is help available. Like, it is important that you reach out. You reach out to, maybe first to someone that you trust, a friend, a family member, a crisis line. And then the next would be going in and seeking professional help.
Yep.
Of going in, it would be
through the door.
Literally stepping through the door.
Yeah, no different than you would go see, again, for your physical health, go seek someone that's a professional in this area and get the help that you need. And I can tell you this, what we do know is that when you seek help, it's effective, right? So people do get better. I've seen many, many people that have, that have a diagnosable mental health, disorder that with the right help live a flourishing life where they're feeling well and functioning well, right? So I want to always let people know there is hope.
Yeah. It's a great topic.
It is.
I know
Extremely important.
really there's more we could dive into
Absolutely.
here, but at the same time, you've got things to do and places to go, so I want to be mindful of that as well. So Randy Barker, thanks for coming over.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for opening up this topic and conversation.
Probably should have him back on at some point, shouldn't we?
Yeah, probably down the line at some point. Yeah, we should definitely have him back. So
that'll do it for this episode of Via the Swarm. I want to thank Randy Barker from the Pruitt Center for Mindfulness and Well-Being on the UW Superior campus for coming by. For Randy, for the Big Sound Matt Johnson, I am John Garver, and thank you for watching Via the Swarm.